everyone. Welcome to the session. So great to see so many of you in here today. I'm really excited for the session we've got coming up. We've got a great panel for you. My name is Victoria Kinshawan. I am the Content Marketing Manager here at Cvent. You might have seen me a couple of times already. Sorry for seeing my face. But this session will be all about how to create experiential events, those immersive experiences, without breaking the bank. And I'm really excited to have this panel of our experts here today. So I'm just going to let each of them in turn introduce themselves. Maybe Sophie, if you start.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Sophie. My name's actually Sophie King because I'm recently married, as Dermot O'Leary announced the other morning. I'm a project director at a brand experience agency called Cheerful 21st, based in London and New York.
Hi everyone, my name is David Kalunja, Head of Global Events at Hitachi Vantara. Hitachi is a massive company, you may or may not have heard of them, headquartered in Japan. And Hitachi Vantara is one of the 900 subsidiary companies that the organisation has. So looking after the global events and enjoying every minute. Big business.
I'm Jane Baker. I'm the founder of brand experience consultancy Rise at 5. We build bespoke teams from a roster of independent specialists. I've worked in the industry for about 20 odd years on brand side, in agencies and as a freelance marketer and event specialist. So looking forward to this. Be good.
Amazing, thank you all so much, and do keep your questions, put them in the app, or we might end up doing a show of hands and I can ask questions, ask you to ask your questions directly. Hopefully we'll have time for that Q&A at the end. But let's start then with a question just to level set. I think sometimes experiential events can seem like a little bit of an intangible thing, you know, why are they so important, why should we have them? So maybe you can share, you know, your view as to why brands and organisations should be investing in experiential events. Maybe Sophie, if you kick us off.
Yeah, I think we're in I hate saying this phrase, but in a post-COVID landscape. I feel as though we're moving very much to the understanding of that legacy, the legacy of that event. You know, if I'm going to fly a member of my team as a corporate, if I'm going to fly a member of my team over to New York to take part in something, why is that not something that they could be doing, you know, sat at their work from home office? So it's all really about showing the value of the return on engagement, and less, I say less, we know that budget is the budget, but less return on investment necessarily, and more what are they getting out of the experience that they couldn't get any other way.
I love that return on engagement. I think we'll touch on it a bit later on. But David, what's your perspective on, you know, why an investment should be made in experiential events and experiential marketing?
I think experiential is super exciting because it gives you the chance to really get to know a brand and gives you the chance to play and tell your story in, you know, an abundant manner of ways. So I just think it's such a fun space to be in, and building an event and creating an event for that space to showcase your company, I think is super exciting. And I think we get to know our customers so much better when we design experiential events and activations for them. So yeah, I'm kind of pushing that as much as I can in our organisation.
And Jane, I guess it's this you know, similar thing for you in terms of you're coming from both the agency perspective, but you've also worked in-house. So, you know, what's your perspective on, you know, why organisations are needing to invest in this as a channel?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a start, experiential events I always find a tricky one. All events are experiences, full stop. We talked yesterday in last night's session about Willy Wonka, came up a few times. It doesn't have to be a good experience, it can be a really bad one. But if you do it really well, events work because they drive sales. They build relationships, you can use them for content creation. They help you with market research, that two-way conversation, you build your communities from it. They work. And we saw that from pandemic period where they went away, we didn't have them, and sales pipelines really suffered as a result of that. We've seen Marketing Bellwether report that comes out, procurement index of marketing directors talking about where they allocate their marketing budgets, and you know, more and more has been going to events in the last few years. I think it's record numbers. Q1 of this year, dropping off a little bit as we've got into more challenging economic times, but I think events are definitely up there where people want to spend their money.
I love what you say about, you know, all events are experiences. That's a really good point to make, and we'll definitely touch on, proving the ROI and the stakeholder management piece of that later on. But I think what would be great for us to discuss is just some examples of experiences that you've organised and what the strategic approach and thinking behind that was. And David, I know that you, for example, were organising a set of roadshow events in different locations, so can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So the Hitachi event, our exchange series, we wanted to, after the COVID thing that we're all so familiar with, how do we re-engage our top clients? How do we bring them back out of their bedrooms, out of their offices? And give them an experience that they're going to remember. We all get 1,000 different invites into our inboxes every day. What is going to stand out and make them want to choose to come to our event versus anything else? So we sat there and we had a look at who the top accounts were and where they were located. And then just started to think a little bit differently and go off the beaten track in terms of which cities we decided to choose. In India, we decided to go to a location called Udaipur, which is kind of west of all the major cities, and really get to know the culture. And I think we chose the place alongside the field marketing teams who do know those accounts really well. It's one thing to sit in corporate and go, yeah, we want to create all these events, but it's another thing to go, who is the event for and what do they actually want out of that activation? So doing a little bit of pre-event research to go, who's coming, what do they want to see, what do they want to experience? So we're able to build a really lovely exchange event for our 75 top clients there. It was an island in the middle of a lake, and you had to take a boat to get there. So it was a captive audience. They had nowhere to go. We hired the entire resort for them, and we just put on an amazing content-rich agenda for them, as well as just using the surroundings, connecting back to nature. We were lucky that we're in an environment we could do that, and just to bring the senses alive, away from the corporate environment and away from the concrete jungle that we're so used to. And it was just it made such a difference to be mindful and thoughtful of the people who are attending and give them that kind of the reconnection with their humanity and their senses that we sometimes don't get the opportunity to do. So that was the India one. We went to Paris. The organisation sponsored the Rugby World Cup last year, so I know budgets are small and all that aside, but we thought, what can we leverage that's already existing in the company? What are other parts of the business doing that we could maybe latch onto and make the best use of? So we designed our 75 exchange series around the Rugby World Cup in Paris. So it was just so lovely to have that core contingent of people come, and then we took them to the rugby, and we had a box there that we hosted them in, and just it was really, really lovely to be in that location. The third event we did was the New York. We partnered with the Wall Street Journal. Sometimes I know we can't get in touch with all the clients that we want to get to because our database is what our database is sometimes. And so I thought, let's partner with an organisation like that. That's a great logo, great name, and we were able to reach people that we normally wouldn't be able to reach because of that activation. So half-a-day event, slightly different to what we did, but in an incredible boutique hotel in New York called the Beekman. And so just thinking of different experiences, and Victoria Beckham was there the next day doing a photo shoot for Vogue, so that was just random, by the way. That wasn't pre-planned, but it's just really nice when it all comes together like that.
What I loved about what you said in relation to the India event was, doing that pre-event research first, and I know, Jane, that's something that you're very keen about in terms of that research and putting that strategy in place. So can you tell us a little bit about that and maybe an event that you've been involved in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. It kind of comes really down to knowing your audience. So I've been involved in tons of events over the years. I can think back to I was involved in Salesforce's Dreamforce, which was a big conference right in the early days, and then really about scale and building community and bringing everybody together. So looking at ways to do that. Parties were a huge thing for them. They wanted to have all these kind of cool parties and acts. And it's actually one of my major talking points. I did a close rehearsal with Stevie Wonder. He was just over there. It was really special. Done other more kind of retail-based events where, coming up to Christmas time now, switch on light shows for Covent Garden where you're bringing people together into a retail environment. using some of the fabulous content that they've got in the neighbourhood. We had the cast of 42nd Street come and do a quick kind of display on a little stage around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, so they can still get to their show in the evening, but able to demonstrate to retail shoppers, essentially, what the market had to offer for them. And one that's more kind of B2B side, worked with Philips quite recently. I was actually in the brand team with Philips. We were building the second customer experience centre to tell their story of all of the different solutions that they offer. That was based in Cambridge, just outside Boston, between Boston and Harvard University. It was due to open in April 2020. We were building it in February 2020. Obviously got interrupted really. We had to kind of pivot from doing a physical build into what would that look like virtually. So we had an established centre in Eindhoven already. People would come and go to that. The take-up was interesting, but it never boomed. So we ended up doing virtual tours of that. We had our host that would tell the story. We had a Philips family. The Philips family were the sickest family in all history, but parents, child, grandparents each had their own health challenges, and you kind of go around the different products and understand more about Philips. And so we had hosts tell that story to teams of people via Zoom. Whereas before we might have only been able to get 3 or 4 people from a buying group, average buying group around 12, sales cycle around 18 months. Now we're doing them virtually. We can get almost the entire buying group together on that one call, including the senior leaders, C-suite folks that we've never really been able to reach before. And from that then went into a fully digital version that then supplemented some of the event activities. So some really interesting kind of, I know you're a big storyteller, we talked about it on briefing call, but ways to tell stories, ways to engage people, ways to understand your audience and their time pressures.
But also doing that, you know, with different formats. So you mentioned the virtual, experiential isn't just in person, that they can have that virtual element as well. And Sophie, I know you've been involved in a really exciting activation at Cannes Lion, which I didn't get to go to this year. I'm very jealous that you were there. But can you tell us about that and, you know, what you were up to there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Cannes Lion, we looked after, I was the project lead for Stagwell Sport Beach, which was an absolute mammoth project. I was very lucky, I'll make no bones about it. Cheerful 21st delivered it for the first time in 2023, and I at the time wasn't at Cheerful 21st, so I kind of came in to a big round of applause. It was fantastic last year, let's make it bigger, bolder, better than it was. So I kind of went in on a high, and we ran with that all the way up to June. I thought it was really interesting what you said before about you get 1,000 invites, right? And Cannes Lion is a perfect example of that. If you're trying to capture an audience, it is nigh on impossible unless you are lit up like Blackpool illuminations and giving them some return. So we start really early on. In fact, we're in that stage now for the 2025 iteration of looking at what are we doing this for? It really is as simple as that. Like, why are they coming? What are they getting out of it? What are we getting out of it as speaking as the client? So we did a lot of work on that, and we built the space with a few different mindsets. One being, these people need places to meet, they need places to eat, they need places to chill out, but we also want them to be able to play basketball with some famous NBA stars. You know, we want them to be able to come and sit and watch Travis Kelce do a talk, which was incredibly exciting. You know, we want to see Elon Musk going to his meetings. There was almost a heavier focus on wanting that experience to be informal and not feel as though, you know, it was an audience and a panel, for example. You know, we wanted to bring those barriers down, which is really hard when you start scaling up and you start looking at the really difficult second album of something that was fantastic in 2023. Very pleased to say it all went exactly how we planned it, and you know, it was extremely successful, so much so that we're now in a position where Sport Beach itself is its own brand, so we're now looking at where else that might kind of grow and develop, and where else we might show up with that. So a really nice, probably the first time in my career that I've been able to kind of step back so early on and think a lot more diligently around what that strategy is and who it's for and who it helps.
Love that you ended on that, because I think that's a running theme of being strategic, being intentional, and understanding your audience. And that brings me to the topic of personalization, and that's been a big theme throughout our conference as well. How are you thinking about making those personalized touch points and experiences at your events? Maybe Jane, if you start us off on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it really feels like we do social stuff again. It comes down to knowing your audience and knowing what resonates with them. To your point about, roadshows, go where they are already. Your audience is already hanging out somewhere. They're already in a community. They're already connecting in certain places. And you need to show up there rather than expecting them to come to you, because 9 out of 10 times they don't have time to come to you. They've got, to your point, a million different invites. Much as I'd love a million different invites and can, but in life in general, you often have a lot of competing needs for your time. So it's really around finding what's the thing that works best for you, delivers against your objectives. So I think a really clear understanding of your ICP from a marketing perspective, who you want to talk to, what you want to say to them, why you want to say that stuff, and what you want them to do. I might touch on this in one of the later questions, but actually I was at an event on Monday with Headspace, one of my clients, and it was around fertility and the connection between fertility challenges and mental health. A lot of the content that was shared was really raw, really personal stories of the experiences that people had gone through, and it connected with people really, really deeply, and people were really prepared to share honest accounts of their own experiences because they felt like they were in a safe space amongst people that understood them. It really made a very powerful emotional connection. I think sometimes we're very focused on what you want people to do as a result of the experience, because we all love a call to action and a next step down the sales pipeline, right? But actually what people feel, what they think of you, that's equally as important.
So that storytelling aspect, and I know, David, you're very passionate about that, and I'd love to hear your perspective on not just the personalization aspect, but how you're thinking about technology and weaving that into the experience. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, look, I think Hitachi Vantara, we're a data company. I think every company should be a data company, because the gold dust is in the data that you collect on your clients. And if you take the time to really analyze that and get deep into it, you can uncover so many incredible things. We live on our devices. We're glued to the phone. We take it into every room. I do. And it's just the amount of content that you can gather from some of these activations is truly exciting because of what you can do with it. And so I think that from a virtual perspective, we ran a Hitachi Social Innovation Forum. When the pandemic hit, I know we all had to go online, and we're all like, oh, how do we navigate this space that we're not used to? We've been pushed into that forcefully. So we decided to build our own platform. For whatever reason, we learned so much through it. But the amount of insights we got on the people who actually attended the event was so exciting. The gamification that we put in there, knowing who they are, what they like, what they saw next, what their preferences were, and being able to look at an integrated marketing campaign and all that, know what to serve them next, know how to measure those things, and once you get into the data, it becomes really, really exciting of, oh, that's a cool data point, what's the story from that? So you start to build the stories around your customers based on the data that they're giving you. I just think that's such an exciting space to be in, and off the back of that, designing those event experiences based on knowing that you know what they like and what they enjoy and what would bring them to the party. So I'm super excited about data and storytelling, and just use it as much as possible because it's literally there in front of your face.
I'd love to dive into that a little bit more with you, Sophie, in terms of what data are you capturing at your events and how are you using that to inform what you then do next?
Yeah, I refer to it, we were just having this conversation, as my sexy metrics, and all my clients are thinking, like, what? I realistically, and I will probably say this again, when you look at it from a black and white perspective, events 9 times out of 10 are an exchange of money for metrics, right? That they are, with all of the beautiful stuff that we put around them, that is exactly what is kind of required to get it over the line. Something that I've kind of dipped my toe in quite an aggressive way with Snowball Sport Beach is the use of RFID. So for Sport Beach, we essentially took a beach and we flattened it and we took it and created a stadium. And because of that, we had huge amounts of space that we needed to try and track. I also had the challenge, as everyone has, that we don't want to be doing the whole kind of scanning people in, scanning people out. We didn't want that clunky attendee experience because that just didn't feel premium for what we were offering. So C then helped us with a fantastic RFID setup that meant actually when we finished the event, and actually during the event, because you know what it's like, clients will always say to you, oh, we won't need any of those reports. All right, okay, 5 minutes into the event, how many people are here? So we ran quite a lot of reporting in terms of how many attendees did we have per day, but we were also able to say, okay, so the busiest time was between 10 and 12 on a Tuesday, and actually is that related to the scheduling? Maybe. Is it related to the fact that the Palais have just kicked out and they've had a whole heap of other stuff going on? We can work out dwell times. We can tell you that the average person was probably there for about 4.5 hours, and I can also tell you what areas of the beach they were most interested in. And that really comes back to my point earlier around that return on engagement rather than return on investment, because that then allows our clients to go back to their, they have 25 sponsors on site. It allows them to go back to each of those sponsors to say, these are the metrics that physically are attached to the work that you've put into this, and here's a report with all of the people that you engaged with. And for those sponsors, it's like, wow, I quite literally can put the money I've spent next to this data, and then go ahead, track the legacy of those conversations and track the legacy of those business deals from there. So RFID, I think, has really changed the game for what we're delivering. You see it used quite a lot in this sort of a space, in a standard conference space, but to use it for an experiential event really just supercharges those metrics, and it's easy to do with Siva.
I love all those ideas. I think it's super interesting. To add on to that, you've given me some ideas, so thank you. Facial recognition at events, but not so much for identification, but for tracking mood and like looking at the room, who's engaged, who's not, who's looking on their phone, who's paying attention, and having that real-time data fed to the presenters so they can adjust in real time to make the changes that are necessary to make the presentation more interesting or take it in a different direction, or using polls like that. Also, the heat mapping, we sometimes use our LiDAR technology to understand who is at what part of the room, how long they stay for, what engages them. So whilst the ideas for, say, 20 booths, we have incredible ideas for what each one of them are, they might all not get the engagement that we thought they would get. So having a look at where people have been and how long for, I think, is super interesting way to take things to the next level at your next event.
I love that as really creative ways of using technology to support your efforts to tell that data story. So that's all really great. And I want to come back to events as a brand building channel. And Jane, I know you have some thoughts on this in terms of how can we, as marketers, as event professionals, tell that story of how events are helping to drive that brand presence for organisations.
I think it's from my side around these individual touch points, and you can have multiple touch points in one single event. You can have multiple events over a period of time. Again, from my Headspace project most recently, we've been working quite hard on how do we track all of that in the tech stack, how do we measure all of that. We work with Salesforce and HubSpot. We've just introduced something called Full Circle Insights, which is a multi-touch attribution software. So whereas before we were kind of measuring first touch or last touch, now we're measuring all of the touches, and that now contributes to lead scoring, so we can look at who is really interested actively in a particular product or particular service. How do we follow up best with them? Kind of a more personalised approach. I think that the technology is really important, and how you use it to craft your outreach, I think equally so. I mean, you might be in the same boat, but I probably get 5 or 6 requests on LinkedIn that send me some absolute garbage, and I'm just like, you've not even read my profile, come on. Just start with the basics.
Start simple.
It doesn't have to be that huge investment. It can be as simple as a little bit of personal research in advance.
So we have a few minutes left. I want to make sure we get some time in for some Q&A. So I am looking at the app, so do put in your questions there. But maybe we can just touch on AI. I have to do that, sorry guys. But I'm just wondering if AI has a place to play, a role to play, in this topic that we're discussing. And if so, how are you thinking about AI and using it? Maybe David. Caught you off guard.
I was just thinking about ideas. AI, I was just literally going to mention that. I've started using it a lot in my day-to-day as well, but it's so exciting what you can do with AI. The sky's the limit, and we're literally just touching on it. So personalization for me is massive, I think. Wherever we can put that into the program, make each person feel special. In a room for 1,000, I want every single person to feel like they are there for them, and we are there for them as well. So how do you use AI to do that? Again, through facial recognition, bringing somebody into an activation. If we've done the pre-work and we know who they are and their preferences, when they walk into the room, how do I serve that up to them? How do I change the mood with the lighting? How do I play their favourite song? How do I serve up their favourite food? How do I know what they're going to say? What's their favourite quote, their author, their movie? All this stuff can be gathered over a period of time, so it's getting to know your customers over a period of time. I just think it's so exciting that we can create these activations with AI that would take us years to find this stuff out before. Now I can literally do it in minutes. It's so exciting.
I love that. And in terms of, wrapping up then, if there was one sort of key takeaway for everyone in the room to go away with, what would that one thing be? Maybe Sophie, you can share with us.
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record. The money for metrics piece, I think, is key. Start with the kind of the two-hander of why are we doing it and what do they need from it. Be that client or attendee, truthfully, because it works both ways, and run from there, because it's very easy in the world of experiential events to throw the kitchen sink at stuff and to say, let's make it glitzy and wonderful and we'll do light shows and drones and yeah, cool. Are the drones meaning anything? Do they, is there a tangible reason why you're doing that? Otherwise, coming back to that budget point, are we just adding line items that eventually end up crippling those marketing budgets? That was a very long answer to what you asked to be a short answer, but those would be my two main.
No, not at all. That was great. And David, what about you? What's the key takeaway?
Storytelling for sure. Get to know your customers, and we all connect through stories, right? From fairy tales back in, whatever to today. Just share your story and be real about it and make it personal. I would say they are my two takeaways.
Mm-hmm. Mine kind of build on both of yours actually. Just for me, it's, and again more recently, around the emotional connection. That you're using a clear understanding of your strategy and brilliant storytelling to really make people feel something and build some affinity to your brand in that sense. You look at some of the, especially in the B2B space, I think something research says around 5% of the market are ready to buy at any one point in time, 95% are not. So, what's going to get you across the line? Also, something like 70% of the sales process is done before they speak to you. So if you're not already in mind, if they don't already like you, you're not even going to get called, you won't get a shot. You have to do the pre-work. So it's really, brand, emotion.
Well, thank you so much for that. We do have time for some Q&A. I was looking in the app furiously to see if there were questions. Luckily there are. So one question we've got is, can you share the thing you've tried that has resonated most with an audience from a surprise and delight perspective? Who wants to go with that one first? Surprise and delight.
I can go with that. A couple of years back now, I was lucky enough to lead an event for an oil and gas company, now a digital technology company. And we were looking for ways to engage those attendees. We were asking them to fly out to Switzerland, and it was a big time investment and a big personal investment for these people. What we decided to do was use a tool called Synthesizia, which some of you might be aware of. We spent about half a day recording the CEO of the company, getting him to do all of his vowels and consonants, etc. And then off the back of that, we created, I think it was around 8,000 or 9,000 personalised invites. And what that would mean is, from the C-Event system, they would get a standard invite email, but within that email was an embedded video that would say, Hi Sophie, so excited to meet with you at our event in September. It's been a long time since I've had a chat with Cheerful 21st, and we're so excited to talk about what you've been doing this year. Feel free to bring your team member David along, and you know, that level of personalisation was something that, we're talking 2 years ago now, but it was something that I'd never seen before, and it was probably, even post-event, it was probably the thing that people spoke about most in terms of how much of a surprise that was, and that idea was actually stolen from a Mondelez Cadbury advert in India for Diwali about 5 years ago. Cadbury's are always doing some of the first stuff. So yeah, it's a really, really nice piece of tech, fairly easy for us to do, but it had a great impact.
So, final question, it will have to be a really short answer for one of you to pick. Can you give us some more practical examples of experiential elements we can integrate into our conferences and events? The answer will need to be quick, but the speakers will be here, so if you do want to chat further, do come. But who wants to take that one? Dave?
I mean, there are so many, and it really depends on what your experience is and does. I mean, the straight up first one, to your point, I think names, like use people's names, remember their names, like talk to people, not to, an audience. People aren't an audience, they're not a group of buyers, they're people. Maybe that, wherever you can see it, use people's names.
Well, there'll be time for our speakers to think a bit more about all of their different experiences that they can share with you after that. But I hope you enjoyed that discussion. Thank you so much again for joining